everybody. This is Jason from the Surf Hermits coming at you on the Pi Records broadcast network with a new show that we're going to call Creative Waves. The show's going to be about, you guessed it, creativity. It's right there in the name. We're going to talk about the philosophy of creativity from a lot of different points of view, hopefully. Mainly, we're coming at it from a musical angle. Writing music, recording music, expressing music, playing music. We might think of it through the lens of writing a song or learning our instrument. All of those things. But we're going to talk a lot about philosophy through the lens of great creators. In the show, we're going to discuss the work of great musicians, writers, painters, and how they thought about creativity. This whole first season is really going to look at two great creators, in my opinion. Firstly, Chick Corea. Secondly, Neil Gaiman, who's a writer. Chick Corea is a jazz piano player largely, though he started as a drummer, supposedly. And you can sort of see that in his rhythmic approach to things. He offers some neat advice encapsulated in a little document called Cheap But Good Advice for Playing Music in a Group. And we're going to go through that point by point and kind of offer some commentary on what sort of advice that offers us as musicians and creators. We're also going to look at some similar types of advice from Neil Gaiman, who's a great writer, and also someone who has worked hard on being productive as a writer, which is an interesting angle. We don't want to think of it from a corporate sense where it's like, get things done for some sort of particular gain or something like that, but more how to get the most out of our own creativity. I think all of us struggle with how do we express ourselves, how do we overcome those procrastinations, those lazinesses that make us want to do other things than sometimes the thing that we really want to be doing, which is creating and expressing ourselves. And we'll talk about some other things too. There'll even be some technical tips, some things helping you mic a guitar amp, for example, or some other ways that we can get past creative blocks. Should be an interesting first season, and I hope you enjoy, so please sit down and join us for Creative Waves on the Pi Records broadcast network. My name's Jason. Let's get some advice from the greats. It's not just about what we discover for ourselves necessarily, though to me those are the most invaluable things, really. Those are the only things that you really truly own, in a sense. Those experiences you've had, those successes and failures, those experiments you've done in the face of contrary advice that worked. Those things are awesome. But there are people out there that have tread the path before us. Often in martial arts, the concept of a sensei or a sifu, those words have literal meanings, but often they sort of mean the one who has come before. They're not someone that's necessarily teaching you something, but they're providing an example for you. They're someone who has trod that path. And so in the face of a great master, we will often take the advice given, which is don't seek to emulate the men of old, rather seek what they sought. So if we're seeking what a great musical master sought, we're not just copying his licks, we're trying to see what they were going for, trying to figure out what they were after when they were doing their thing. Because we're all getting towards a similar place, but we all take different paths. We can never take the same path. So we can't take someone as a great guru that will lead us to the answer. None of those things are true. We find the answer. But good teachers are around us that will show us, aspects of the path, give us a glimpse of the map ahead of us, give us advice, but those things are only ever what we do with them. And that's true with music as well. There are people that gain great enjoyment out of just playing songs that they like, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I mean, even those people are creating something new for themselves, no matter how closely they try to emulate what they're emulating. And those of us that branch more into creating original music, it's even more important to not copy, but to interpret, to take under advisement those bits of musical advice that we encounter. Because it always becomes ours. Even if I were to copy my favorite drummer's things, which I've done many times, I'm putting them into contexts where that drummer didn't play them. and sometimes they become new things, which is cool. And in a way, that's how we all develop a style. Nothing's really truly original. We just sort of pull things together out of our experience, and something new is made from that, which is really cool. So over the next few weeks, I want to talk about Chick Corea's cheap but good advice for playing music in a group. And I don't have this memorized, so you'll see me turn and read a couple of these things. But this was from a performance at Berkeley that Chick Corea gave in, where was it? 1985, looks like. A typewritten thing was handed out to people, and it was Chick Corea's cheap advice for playing music in a group. Cheap but good advice, as he put it. So we'll go over these bit by bit, and we'll talk about how they could be interpreted. Chick, he appeared before the crowd, and as it was said in the article here, Corea told an energetic and musically sophisticated crowd of aspiring jazz and rock musicians that what matters most in their own musical pursuits is knowing the certainty of what you like and how that fits into things. And to me, that's an important thing in itself, that certainty of what you like. You know what you like. Don't be afraid to play that. Play what you like. A lot of times we have a pretty vicious self-editing mechanism in our creative brains that encourages us to play things that we think we should play, and not always what we'd like to play, which there's a distinction there. So, I think that's a great piece of advice. Again, what matters most in your own musical pursuits is knowing the certainty of what you like and how that fits into things. And that's a learning process, right? Sometimes the things we like don't seem to fit in anywhere. There's a great joke meme where it's like, the things I like to do, the things that make me money, and the things I'm good at, as like a Venn diagram that does not overlap at all. And that's okay. As we learn where those things that we like fit into the world. And we're going to actually talk about some other advice from Neil Gaiman, who's a very famous writer, that talks directly to that problem of how do we fit things in. But let's have a talk about Chick Corea. Cheap but good advice for playing music in a group. Number one is play only what you hear. Wow, that seems pretty easy, doesn't it? So, playing what you hear. That's easier said than done, obviously. It's one of those things that's so simple that it seems really hard, and it's actually really hard when it seems fairly simple. As always, the best things are all cool paradoxes. It's sort of like what I mentioned before. Play what you actually hear. Don't play what you think you should hear. Don't play what other people are telling you should hear, unless, of course, you're playing a session for somebody, in which case, play exactly what they'd like you to play. But in a creative setting that you're able to be creative in, then you want to play what you actually hear should be there. Sometimes when we play, even as instrumentalists, even if we're not writing the music necessarily, but we sort of shy away from things because we think, oh, maybe that won't be fast enough for people, or will this impress people, or, will they think this is good? If you think it fits there and you hear it in there, then play that. That is your creative process right there. That's you trying to express itself, to express yourself. So play what you hear. That's why you're there. If you're in a group, you're there because they value you as a player, or should be. Maybe you're there because they couldn't find another player that plays that instrument. But nonetheless, you're all they've got. So give them you, in a sense. Be you. Play what you hear. To take it in a slightly different angle, make sure that you're listening. Make sure you're hearing what's going on in the musical situation, so that you can play something that fits with that, so that you're able to hear what you should play. So that's another aspect of it. We want to be able to hear. We want to be listening. We don't want to be kind of down looking at our fretboard and kind of dissociated from what other people are playing. Great musicians are responsive musicians, flexible musicians, adaptable musicians. When things change, they can change with them. That's true for any great skill of any sort. Again, a martial artist, they need to be able to change as things change. If you just go in there and do one thing that you've practiced, you're probably going to get booted in the face more than you'd like. So you need to be flexible. You need to be perceptive. You need to be responsive to the situation. And that's exactly what music is like. You need to be able to be listening. You need to be able to be hearing, watching. And when you hear something that needs you to play, then you need to be able to play. Play what you hear. Okay? That's a fun one for sure. Let's do number 2. And just because we're leaving that one behind doesn't mean there's not more to it. There's tons more to it. We could probably go on for an hour about play what you hear means. See, I'm backtracking already. In terms of what you would like to play musically, stylistically, hey, I'd like to play jazz or whatever. I want to play surf. It makes sense to have listened to that music, to be listening to that music, to understand and to hear what's going on in that music, for you to be able to play it. That doesn't mean you can't do something innovative on top of that. I don't mean to say that you have to be an expert in these things. You know, your value as a surf musician is not measured by how many Ventures records you have or whatever. It's more that just be familiar with what's there so that you can deliberately not do that or deliberately do that. The point is you can choose. So again, play what you hear, play what you listen to. Listen to what you play, in terms of just music that you enjoy. I find that when I meet people that are immersed in something and it sinks in somehow, there's an almost process of osmosis where someone can, where you start to pick up what's going on in that music, more than just the techniques and the licks or whatever that are in there, but what that music is going for, in a sense. Again, don't seek to emulate the men of old, rather seek what they sought. And it's the same with music. Don't seek to emulate your favorite music. Look for what it's going for you. From my own point of view, with surf music, there's an energy to it. Like, there's the action of surfing or skiing or any of those types of activities where you're on the razor's edge. You know, you're going to dump it into that big wave, or you're going to, fall down the mountain or whatever. There's an action, there's an activity, there's an energy to that. And that for me is what I go for in the music. And that's what I get out of the music. When I used to ski all the time as a younger person, I always had the Hawaii 5-0 theme in my head for some reason. It just had the right vibe for like going down and dodging trees and going over things. I loved that. And to me, that's what I try and capture when I'm making music, especially in this genre. So if you hear it, play it, right? What do you hear in your head when you're doing something you really enjoy? Can you express that musically? Yeah, absolutely you can. So play what you hear. Okay, sorry, number 2. Play what you hear is a big one. And this one's kind of related. If you don't hear anything, don't play anything. Interesting. If you don't hear anything, don't play anything. And again, Chick is aiming this at, playing music in a group. Fair enough. I think we've all played in groups where people are just playing to play, where space is just getting filled if it doesn't need to. And, it's important to know that there's a time not to play and a time to play. I mean, music itself is about this paradox, this yin and yang of note and silence. Music is not just a constant sound. Music is sounds and not sounds in certain orders and in rhythms and in certain harmonic intervals that create what we know as music. So silence is just as important to any note you've ever heard as the note itself, because the note has no meaning without the silences that are around it. Those silences can be shorter or longer. The notes can be shorter or longer. That's what makes music rhythmic and interesting. But nonetheless, silence is as much a part of music as sound. So we need to know when not to play. And certainly, being a good player, we're doing a lot of that unconsciously. But also we need to be able to know when to leave some space, let other people go for it, let something breathe for a minute, let something ride for a second, right? We don't need to fill it all up. It's not about us having to constantly sort of shout into the wind. I'm guilty as anybody. I'm a bad overplayer sometimes, and the way I hear things sometimes is to fill them up, but that's a habit in a sense, and that's one of those things that I'm always working on breaking as much as I can. And some of the music I appreciate the most really knows how to use space in a way and to let things breathe. So that's an important concept. If you don't hear anything, don't play anything. And we could go deeper into that one too, but I'm gonna spare you. We don't want to take your entire day with philosophical ramblings. So thanks for hanging out on Creative Waves right here on Pi Records Network, and we'll see you next week. Take care.